Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Security Space podcast. Today, what we are discussing is the ransomware tool matrix, and a few of you might not be aware of what that actually is. Hence, why I wanted to do this pod and shed a bit of light on it, because I'm joined today by an absolutely excellent senior CTI analyst in Will Thomas, who will actually created this ransomware tool matrix. Um, the reason being is that ransomware attacks are becoming increasingly damaging, but one thing that remains consistent is the tools that these cyber criminals actually rely on. Now, I can't take credit for that introduction because it very much came from Will's rationale as to why he made the ransomware matrix. So, with that being said, I will pass over to you, Will, just to give a little bit of an introduction to yourself, if that is okay.
Thanks, Nick. Yeah, I appreciate you inviting me on for your podcast today. So I've been working in CTI and threat hunting for about 6 years now, and been in this field of cybersecurity for coming up to 10 years already. And I sort of left school and went straight to university and straight into industry. So cyber is pretty much all I know. I've been working for vendors. I've been working on the defense side, and now I'm back at a vendor, Team Cymru. So I started off working at a company called Cyjax, which is a CTI threat intelligence provider. We have been, I was writing and managing a threat actor database and writing incident reports, analyzing threat actors on the cybercrime underground, creating personas and sock puppet accounts and infiltrating those forums, and just analyzing everything that goes on in those forums. And then after that, I did that for 2.5 years. Then I worked for Equinix, which is the world's largest data center company, something like 270 data centers around the world. And it's kind of they build themselves as the world's infrastructure company because pretty much every cloud provider, every ISP, every major ISP you can think of will in some capacity be inside of Equinix. Very interesting company to work for. I did a 3.5 years there, and I worked as started off as a CTI researcher, and then became sort of the leader of the head of threat hunting there. I built the program from scratch with a team of about 10 analysts in my unit or department, which was the Equinix Threat Analysis Center, run by Sean O'Connor. So yeah, it was a great opportunity. I learned a lot about enterprise security, managing threat intelligence programs, threat hunting programs, all that sort of stuff. Um, from there, ransomware was one of our top priorities, one of our biggest threats that we were concerned about. So, basically dedicated a lot of my time to researching everything to do with ransomware. Ransomware became something that we spoke about every single day, pretty much. Knew who all the different groups were, tried to understand, what their affiliations are, what forums they're a part of, what their TTPs are, and what their tools were. So this is what led me to researching ransomware so much that I managed to see a lot of overlapping patterns and things, and that's what led me to creating the ransomware tool matrix.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for that introduction, Will. And yeah, like I say, it sounds like even with your very, very busy day job that you've decided to go and make this ransomware matrix. So obviously you've got the rationale as to why you've done it. Now, my first question is why has it not been done before? Why is something like the NCSC, or have they made something like this before? Because it sounds like on the paper this is just an invaluable tool, and it's like, okay, these are what it's just like a reverse engineer. This is what the attackers are using. Let's go back, and it's a very, very common practice that in your field. So why has it not been made before, Will?
Good question. I think the funny thing is a lot of people across the whole industry we're relying on the MITRE ATT&CK framework, right? MITRE ATT&CK framework is a great knowledge base of adversary tactics, techniques, and procedures (TTPs), and it's a great way to describe how attacks work by each step of the kill chain. The trouble is it's not updated that often. It's not sort of like live crowdsourced community contributions every day, every week. So it's quite, slow for lack of a better word. It's a great resource. It's a great sort of library of ways that attacks can happen. But if you want to know what the Akira ransomware gang is doing this week, it's only going to have from a year ago, say, for example. just as a reason of why I felt that it's better to have a sort of a like the ransomware tool matrix is a live project that I maintain. I Every time I see some sort of interesting report that says what a ransomware group does, what tools they're using to complete that intrusion, I will update it. So probably once or twice a month, I'll update it with several reports that came out that month, of what each ransomware gang has been observed to do. The reason that the US Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency (CISA) or the UK National Cybersecurity Centre (NCSC), the reason why they haven't created something like this is, I can't really say too easily. I mean, they do put out a lot of good research, but for me, ransomware is such a high priority that I felt like I just had to kind of plug that gap for myself and for others. So ever since I've released it, I've had a lot of people around the world say how useful it's been for them and how much they appreciate someone just collecting a knowledge base of everything that's been put out there and linking it all together and making it consumable and usable, right?
Mm.
So there's a lot of open source intelligence that's gone onto here. So, I mean, CISA, other organizations, the DFIR report, um, other cybersecurity vendors, they helped really start this project because they do put out reports about what tools and what TTPs and IOCs of each ransomware gang has been doing or has been observed. So the project wouldn't have been able to get started without people putting out that type of research.
Yeah.
It's just to go through 20 reports, 50 reports by each organization, for every individual team where there may be only one or two CTI or threat hunting analysts. It's a lot of work, and I realized a lot of us, like other people, had actually kind of started this. They kind of had We're all doing the same type of work, right? It's a lot of effort being duplicated by many teams, and I realized it's better to kind of pool this work together. If you look on the GitHub page, we actually have 17 contributors already. So these are people in the industry. These are DFIR analysts, CTI analysts, who have come across some observations of ransomware gangs. If they work in DFIR, they may be doing like, I don't know, 3 or 4 ransomware incident response engagements per month. So they have a really good understanding of what's the latest tools each ransomware gang is
Mm.
using. And when they submit to the repo, like it's new information, new information, it's threat intelligence, that we could maybe necessarily couldn't get without them sharing it. So we all care about these threats. We all care about what they're using right now, so that we have the detections in place. We're threat hunting for them. Or you're responding to incidents and you want to try and find the indicators of compromise during that intrusion. So but there's no sort of live feed of that sort of thing necessarily, or you have to pay, one of the top vendors, CrowdStrike, Mandiant, whoever, millions of dollars to actually get that.
Well, that leads perfectly to what I was going to say. So, like, there is, I'm seeing in the past sort of past year or so from more and more people that I'm speaking specifically into CTI. There's an excellent culture in the sense of like knowledge sharing. So, for example, between the challenger banks, I know that they speak to one another and they knowledge share and they get across like the different threats that are facing that specific sector. And that's really refreshing to hear that security has that culture and it's not like a us versus them sort of approach. Um, and it led very nicely to me going putting a devil's crown on and say like, why is this not behind a paywall, Will? Because it is terrific value. And you said right there at the end, well, you paid millions to like a CrowdStrike and this and that. Yeah, I suppose it is. Why are you doing this and not benefit? Is it just a sense of like, yeah, I don't want to do that. It's like I just want to. This is what is an invaluable tool for me, and it'll be an invaluable tool for others. And is that the reason that you actually did that?
Yeah, I think there's a mixture of reasons. I run a CTI trust group called Curated Intelligence, which is about 180 different CTI analysts, and it's not like you have ISACs, you have paid membership groups that you can be a part of. I mean, it's a community that we run for free, right? Like anyone, like we invite people specifically that we know do good work in the industry and would fit our sort of culture of
Mm.
sharing and collaborating. Um, But yeah, I mean, there is the paid route with these things, but from my experience over the last 5, 6 years of working in this industry, it's always been very beneficial to to kind of collaborate freely and openly.
Yeah.
If everyone acted like everything's behind a paywall and we block everyone and and hide everything, hoard the knowledge for ourselves, um, then you're actually helping the attackers in some ways, right? You're not getting that knowledge out there to the people that need it. And the other thing is the ransomware tool matrix, yes, a lot of work has gone into it, but it's based on a lot of open source intelligence as
Yeah.
well, right? So other people have felt that they need to share that information publicly and freely. So I've basically just pulled it all together in one place and made it consumable and actionable.
Nice. Okay. That sounds really good, that Will. And I suppose would it be possible for you to actually show us some of this actually live on the pod today? Would that be possible?
Yeah, for sure. It's no problem.
Cool.
Yeah, so here's basically what it looks like. It's essentially just a GitHub page, which is on my personal GitHub site. Essentially, it's been running for quite a long time. You could probably, go into insights and have a look at, the commits and things, 741 commits. So fair bit of activity going on here. It's had 1.2K stars overall. So there's the people that have kind of bookmarked it.
Yep.
Um, we have this is what I was saying. We had 17 contributors, and essentially here's sort of like how it works. So we've broken down the tools into different categories. So things like RMM tools, exfiltration tools, networking discovery, offensive security tools. Because the main thing is when you're looking at all these different intrusions, you will see the same tools appear again and again. So this is a really good example of what I mean. The most used tools, you'll see things like Soft Perfect NetScan,
Mm.
Cobalt Strike, AnyDesk, used by like 20 different ransomware gangs who will use these things. And as I was reading reports by CISA, reports by the DFAR report, other organizations' research, I just kept seeing the same things over and over again. I'm like, wow, it's either one really busy ransomware gang or it's just the sort of ransomware community of threat actors and cyber criminals just are copying each other. Maybe in some cases they're actually reading the same blogs and seeing what the other ransomware gangs are doing and using it as well, right? They may, the Akira ransomware gang may read that Blacklock no, sorry, Black Suit is using Atera. Maybe they'll try that next time because they think, well, if that gang's using it, then maybe I should give that one a go as well, right? And again, like ransomware is a lot of these are like cybercrime enterprises. They're not even just, two or three guys working from their parents' basements. These are like 100+ guys and girls working in offices in Moscow and St. Petersburg and things to actually run daily, weekly ransomware campaigns. And they get paid salaries and stuff. Like I'm not kidding. This is based on leaks of internal chats from
Like
group.
organized crime, isn't it? Like the way that it's sort of structured now, isn't it?
Exactly, like the Conti ransomware gang, the Black Basta ransomware gang, they've had their internal chats leaked and dumped publicly so we can learn exactly how they operate. And there's multiple individuals doing different types of jobs. You'll have one team finding the access, another team using these tools and going in and spreading around and stealing the data and launching the ransomware. But then you'll have another team that develops the ransomware itself, develops the platform, the negotiations, handles the leaks. Like there's so many different people handling different parts of it. This is just kind of one slice of what we're dealing with because this kind of geared towards defenders and threat hunters, detection engineers, threat intelligence analysts who are trying to protect the companies that they work for, the customers that they serve, from these types of attacks. And if you can build detection rules and threat hunt and just straight up block some of these things, the chances of a successful ransomware attack against your organization is like drastically reduced. What another example of something that could be another indicator of why we see this activity is things like the Conti playbook and the Bastard networking manual. There's a blog by Cisco Talos here of tools and things that were basically a guide of how the threat actors were launching these um, attacks. And if we open up the PDF, oh, sorry, it's not.
Always happens on a demo. Something always happens, Will.
Yeah, I think I've got it. I thought I had it archived in the repo somewhere, but yeah, it's amazing
Yeah.
the way that the threat actors will share that information amongst themselves. So the Bastillard networking manual is an example I always come back to because it's not very long, but it again, look here. This was a manual that a threat actor, a cyber criminal put together.
Mm.
Who's been sanctioned is on the sanctions list of OFAC and FBI Most Wanted and stuff. So he put together a manual and shared it with other ransomware cyber criminals on the Russian speaking forums. And this has been translated into machine translated into English. And you'll see like the same things, right? You'll see Nmap, Mimikatz, GMER, PSExec, PowerTool. And if we go into the most used tools again, um, if we go back to top 10 most used tools, you see some of these
Yeah.
things, GWR, Mimikatz, like it's no surprise that ransomware gangs are copying each other. So, and then another good example, another good way to illustrate the problem is here's all the tools, at some point in the when this was created, I mean 4 months ago, updated, a few months ago. This is all the different tools that all the different ransomware gangs use. And there's a pretty big variety. I think there's something like 200 plus different tools here, and some of them will be used by one or two ransomware gangs, and others will be used by 20. But if you sort of programmatically went through each category and built detection rules or blocked each tool, then the chances of a ransomware attack being successful against you would be minimal because you know what they're using and you could stop them from being successful, right? It's just the other challenge is let me stop sharing the screen here. But the other challenge is like actually having the human resources to go and do that type of work, right?
Mm.
Maybe you have different setups and different security teams. Some will rely on an MSSP. Others will have an internal team. And whether your MSSP, like, if the MSSP does that, then they're protecting multiple customers, right? But if your internal team is tasked to doing that, that could be very resource intensive for them to go through each individual tool. So now they have to try and prioritize. And that's where the most used tools thing comes in helpful. If you stop those, it's a start, right?
Absolutely, it is. And I suppose jumping on that one is because that is an absolutely fantastic sort of run through that you've done there, Will. And what I'm more just my mind went to obviously the high profile retail ransomware instance that happened this year, and I know that it's sort of been beaten to death this one, but it's relevant to this case study. Is like them most common used tools. Surely these large scale retail companies must have been aware of them and must have put in detection rules against them beforehand. Do you think that yeah they could have done, but they still got hit, or they might not have done? Because I'm saying that they do have large teams in there working in CTI. It's not like they are 50 heads and security is new to them. So they've obviously got a CTI capacity. And I'm not saying that any company is impenetrable. Absolutely not. Absolutely none on this world is, which is why he said like the risk will be minimal. But surely at the simplest of expectations, if you don't have that much time, you'd go to the top 20 most tools, and be like, right, let's at least defend against these because that's going to be a large part of the attack surface. Am I right? Am I wrong? And why do you think that? Well, they could have done, and they've got in a different way. What's your thoughts on sort of what's happened this year?
Yeah, you make a great point, and I don't want to give the attackers too much credit, but they have almost figured out a way to launch some of these attacks without tools now
Wow.
because um, it's almost like a kind of like a full-on red team, a focused red team engagement against a company where they've studied the organization, they've figured out who the target is, and they'll use social engineering, right? So they'll do a lot of the large attacks against retailers in the UK has been sort of focused on help desk social engineering. And once you do that, you can reset the password, and now you have access to, Microsoft 365. You can spin up a VM. You can then start, scanning. You can sort of just run, living off the land binaries, right? And then from there, once they may deploy one or two tools to do credential dumping, but you can do that with living off the land binaries. And then or you can just go into basically what I've heard for some of these retailers, they messaged once they got access, they messaged someone else on Slack and said, please, can you elevate my account to administrator? And they just did it because you have social engineered an IT worker, like an IT administrator. And then from there, you just go into Confluence or wherever your documentation is, SharePoint, find which system is the domain admin, is the domain controller or the ESXi hypervisor, just log into it, and then the only thing you do then is download the payload and run it. It's actually not that difficult to do some of these intrusions, right? They're very human-driven, hands-on keyboard, living off the land binary type attacks, and the social engineering aspect of it, of resetting a password and then asking someone to give you elevated privileges. The only thing that would stop that would be the right controls and processes in place for just generic IT administration internally. Because once they've done that, and once they get onto those systems, either the domain controller or the ESXi hypervisor, the main controller should have good detection and logging, right? But ESXi hypervisors, you can't put antivirus on them. You can't put EDR on them. They're very finicky systems, and they host thousands of VMs. They're kind of like your crown jewels. But a threat actor can just SSH into them, and then just run a script that encrypts all the VMs. It's actually really hard to stop.
Yeah.
There's not really any tools being used there. So to give credit to some threat actors, they have figured out a way to launch these attacks without running any tools.
And that is it's part of the beauty of the game of cyber where it's constantly evolving. What was right yesterday is wrong today, and vice versa. It is evolving, and we need to evolve with it. I always try to avoid a pod without mentioning them two letters AI, but I know you didn't mention AI in your example there with the social engineering example, but I just wanted to kind of finish on how AI has sort of changed the scope of attack vectors, and how that has had an impact on sort of ransomware. Because, like you say, these these like 19-year-olds that are essentially like hitting these high profile organizations, um, it's phenomenal. But like in terms of like, I'm not saying that they're not smart. They're absolutely they're very smart, but they must have had some help to be able to get into organizations that have got like enterprise level security. So therefore they must have had a helping hand by AI. Am I correct with that? And has it sort of changed the game in terms of ransomware?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think AI is supporting ransomware attacks much like it supports software development. It allows them to do things faster, get information about things more easily, and then also ask it questions like, "Oh, once I have this, what are the options? What are my options?" So it's almost like having someone more experienced who can tutor you on how to do things. And these 18-year-old kids and 19-year-old kids who, a couple were arrested yesterday, right? They're, without a doubt, it would be completely surprised me if they hadn't used AI at all to do some of these things, right? It's just the nature of cyber in many ways. Like we've evolved. This new technologies come around, and we have to adapt to it. If you think about, I was watching, I think Channel 4 documentaries brought out something like a school in Yorkshire, and how teachers are dealing with AI, and these kids who are just going into secondary school are now have been using AI since primary school. It's crazy. Like these kids are using it from the age of like 7 and 8, to cheat on homework, and it's no surprise that by the time they're 18, they're experts and they're uh, they're able to do all sorts of stuff like ransomware, a giant retailer. It's
Yeah.
pretty scary.
It is scary. And do you know what? My little boy just started school last couple of weeks. And I was shocked when he came home. He was like, oh, I got homework. First, I was like, homework in reception. I was like, okay. And then secondly, I was like, all right, get it out. Let's do it then. And it was scanning it for a QR code. And I was like, what are we doing here? I thought
Wow.
so it's phonics. So but you scan it and it's like a video now, and I'm like, this is a bit of a cop out. But there we go. Fred the Frog is now teaching myself and my boy all about his phonics. But I'm not saying that's AI. I'm just saying that the world has changed from when we were kids, and it will change again and again and again, and it's just the cycle of life. Um, Last question for you, Will, as I know we're pretty much coming to our time. What's the end goal with the ransomware tool matrix then? Have you got an end goal? Do you see it sort of ending somewhere, or is it just an evolving thing like we just mentioned?
Yeah, I think it's been an evolving thing. I've really enjoyed having this kind of side project. I mean, I've got quite a few side projects. I mean, also the co-author of a SANS course. I'm always updating that as well, and the ransomware tool matrix will, feature in that. But it's nice to have a side project that just lives by itself. People contribute to it. A few people even, they contributed it to it this week, and I think it just slowly evolves over time. And it's fun to see where it will go. It's actually there isn't really an end goal other than to keep it going, keep adding to it, and see where it goes and see where it takes us. What one major update I've kind of done recently in the last few weeks or so was the community reports feature. So one of the main things, like I mentioned earlier, one of the main things about the project was that it's based on open source intelligence, and I need people, cybersecurity vendors and government organizations to share their observations, right? Like, oh, we saw, the Akira ransomware gang using these tools this week, or the last 6 months, and here's some examples of their TTPs. I need people to push that out, but I realized, you know, it's actually not that fast and not that many reports. So I was able to go back through, 5, 6 years of stuff, load it all in the matrix, and now it's like up to date. And now I'm waiting for people to publish that stuff. And I'm realizing how long it takes to get that intel. So through community reports, I now have members of the community, incident responders, CTI analysts, MSSP analysts, and things who have observed a ransomware gang launching an attack and what tools were used in those attacks. And then they can share it via with the rest of the community via the matrix. So instead of having to spend time, writing a blog for their company website, which has to go through legal, it has to go through PR and marketing, it has to go through all these different stages of editing before the information can actually be published. So it can take weeks or months at a time sometimes. They can just, get the sign off from their line manager or whoever and share it via a very simple templated report that helps other people straight away, right? So I've already had a couple of contributions from its response team who have shared their observations for Akira and Ransom Hub over the last 6, 9 months. So go anyone, I invite anyone if they want to see what these threat actors are doing right now, go and read some of these things.
Well, the industry needs more people like yourself that contribute absolutely fantastic work, literally out of pure passion for your role more than anything. So it's been absolutely thrilling to actually sort of see this in action today. And if anybody's got any questions or would like to contribute to the Ransomware Matrix, I'll be sure to put all links to it down below. But Will, thank you once again for coming on the Skew Space podcast.
Thanks very much, Nick. Appreciate it. Take care.